Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's Robert Phoenix, and I'm back again, broadcasting to you live on the 22nd of April. What's going on, boys and girls, ladies and gents? Let me just sign in very, very quickly to Chat so that I can get things moving along in that area of the broadcast. Here we go. We are back in the saddle again. We'll get into the general chat. Let's see, hello everyone. I'll come back on over to the YouTube side as well, since we're reassembling together again after this very, very strange week. And let me just turn that down so I don't have to hear myself. And here we go. Morning. All right. Hey, so what's happening? It is the 22nd of April, and it's been a very intense week. Very, very intense. And I knew it was going to be intense, and it all started with last Monday, and I think that was the last broadcast I did, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been Monday, Tuesday. And then I took the rest of the week off because it really felt like the energy was getting very intense, very hot, very heavy, like smoking. And that's what we saw with Notre-Dame. And it's really interesting. I had a comment that came through on the website, on the YouTube. It came through the other night. And it was, "For the love of God, this is not a holy war. It's all about the money. Just follow the money." And that was 24 hours before bombs went off in Sri Lanka. Now, if you recall, and you were part of the Sunday night show, which was a pretty intense show, that one of the things that I talked about was, in fact, it was not this, well, it wasn't this last night, but the Sunday before. And even the Sunday before that, I was talking specifically about the Sun-Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus. And what did I say? I said it would be explosive. Explosive. And that's exactly what happened. So it didn't surprise me that we were dealing with yet another event. And an explosive one that had bombs. Now, that was a real event. You want to see what a real event looks like? You pay attention to what happened in Sri Lanka. That shit is real. That is not, we're not running around looking at 5 minutes worth of first person shooter garbage CGI video with lurkers in the background in orange jumpsuits and carefully staged pieces of music every single spot along the way, like we were playing a first-person shooter game, and then trying to reconstruct that video, but not being able to reconstruct the video because there had been a lockdown on that video. No, it wasn't like that at all. If you look at the footage of what took place in Sri Lanka, you'll be shocked, because what you will see, if you're paying really close attention, is blood everywhere. This is not some fake blood bullshit. This happened all across the country. Apparently, there were 82 more bombs that were set, ready to go off. And they were taking place in where? Churches. So now we're dealing with a full frontal assault on Christianity. We saw it with Notre-Dame, and if you don't understand what happened with Notre-Dame, let me just spell it out for you very, very explicitly and clear, that church was set on fire. But it was more than set on fire. There was something that happened with Notre-Dame that wasn't just the ignition of a flame. That timber, that aged oak, which was thousands of years old, Thousands of years old. Those trees don't grow anymore in France. That oak is almost impossible to burn. It wasn't like it was tinder or kindling. There was something going on with the church. Some other kind of device had been set. Something incredibly incendiary. And it was set. Of course, we've all seen the shadowy little figure walking along the outside of the church and the little flash of light. Yep, that got out. Probably got out for our public consumption. And that got out, and we're going down that rabbit hole. And there's probably something else that's connected to it that we're not seeing, because that's what happens. Now, this is effectively, theoretically, brought the EU together. Oh my God. We've got to come together now for Notre-Dame and for France. Not because anybody did anything, but because, well, we have to spend money and rebuild Notre-Dame strong, or whatever kind of bullshit or tripe that they want to put forward. So how does this affect the yellow vesters? Well, I can tell you, probably didn't have much of a yellow investment on Saturday, did they? That country's in mourning now. But if I were the yellow vesters, I wouldn't waste any time. I'd get back out there this coming Saturday, because I think deep down inside they know who pulled the trigger on that thing. It was Mr. Macron. Mr. Macron and his globalist stoogie Rothschild EU henchmen. That's who pulled the trigger on it. And now they're going to rebuild Notre-Dame, and they're going to rebuild it in a way that is going to reflect the new values of France, the new values of Europe. Will they make it into a pyramid? Will they honor Islam somewhere in the architecture? How are they going to shape and mold this new vision, this new version of Christianity? Because I'll tell you right now, man, Christianity is in the crosshairs. It is in the crosshairs. And it's not, I'm not sitting here telling you this because I'm a Christian soldier. I can just see it. If you can't see it, you're not looking, you're not paying attention, or you're in denial. And I'm not even going to sit here and say that it's the Muslims that have Christianity in the crosshairs. I think the Muslims have been weaponized. They have been weaponized in a really big way. And it's part of this great divide and conquer scheme that is going on 24/7, 24/7. Again, here's some coffee, wake up, have a sniff. There's a war going on. And it's been going on for a while, and I've been talking about it for a while. And most of us just want to get on with our lives and live our lives and have the semblance of a life, go on a vacation. If we have children, we want to make sure our children are safe and they don't get fleeced by colleges as they move through high school. And we want to make sure that if we have a child who's a young girl, they don't come home with beards and having their breasts amputated. Now, these are the small things that we're having to just pay attention to in our lives. All right? Now, I mean, let's really think about that. We have had a good stretch. We had a really good run where we didn't have to put up with this bullshit. Loans might have been expensive, money might have been expensive, we might have had a little inflation every now and then, we might have taken a few shots globally every now and then, but by and large, we could get on with our lives. By and large, we could go out and get a car every 2 years. I'm not saying this is the ultimate kind of pinnacle of civilization. I'm not saying that at all. But we could move on with our lives. We could have some sense of continuity. If we were lucky, we could go see our family, our friends, our relatives. Maybe we take a nice little deluxe vacation every couple of years. Indulge our hobbies, get better at something. If you were really, really ambitious, you could start a little side business. And then maybe if you wanted to morph into that side business and get out of your workaday world. I mean, there were a lot of different options. And culture wasn't as hammered as much. Well, you don't want to know why? Because they needed the United States. For a long period of time, they needed the United States. It had this vast amount of resources. It had a big, fat middle class. that have values of hard work, which enabled the globalists and the oligarchs to get really filthy rich because they had competent workers. And then they had people that would spend their money on their goods. So it was important to keep the dream alive. To keep the dream alive. To keep this kind of proscenium, right, erected and up. We needed to have that. We needed to have that reality because it kept everybody remotely happy. Well, they don't give a shit about that anymore. They don't give a shit. This is, ever since 9/11/2001, the country has been in a state of demolition. That's it. Been in a state of demolition. It's been over and done with, right? And what we're dealing with now is we're dealing with the aftermath around this demolition. That's what's going on. And if you can't figure it out, you're not paying attention. You're just not paying attention. Because there are big things afoot. Really significant things that are afoot. And you know what else happened yesterday? I was looking around for news on the Sri Lankan bombings. It was very hard to find. Very hard to find. They didn't really publicize it in a way that, boy, did they publicize the Christchurch event. That was 24/7. So now we have Christchurch, which took place theoretically in a mosque. Then we have the fire at Notre-Dame. Now we have the Sri Lankan absolute disaster. I mean, people, if you look at some of the footage, there is blood everywhere. And they don't want to show that. This is why they didn't get a lot of coverage. Because that gives up the plot. That's when something really happens. When something doesn't happen, there's a significant and serious lack of bodily fluids. So another couple of things have happened over the past few days that are related to what took place. If you weren't paying attention again, you would kind of miss the fact that this is the anniversary of both Columbine and the Oklahoma City bombing. And oh, what did we have? We had another bombing. We had another bombing just days after the anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing. And in both cases, there has been, of course, the retrograde press. And the retrograde press takes us back into those events and people who were either there or who those events affected on a personal level. And you could read stories about people who were moved by what happened at Columbine or were moved by what happened in Oklahoma City, the OKC bombing. I'll tell you what they left out. They left out the fire at the Branch Davidians in Waco. It's another event that happens right around. This is a terrible time of year. Absolutely terrible. This is the season of Molech. This is when things get burned. Yeah, that's right. Ritual burnings in the season happens every single year. And it ends on May Day. So we've got another 8 days before this thing begins to, hey, Paul, got a new Paul von Hindenburg. We've got a new subscriber. Right on, Paul. Welcome to the party. So, of course, people didn't talk about Waco. They never talk really about Waco. They'll bring up Oklahoma City, but they won't talk about Waco. The reason they don't want to talk about Waco is because kids were killed there. They were burned to death. They were absolutely and utterly burned to death. That's what they did. They set the compound on fire. Now, I don't know how much you know about Waco, but at night they would try to get out. People would try to leave. Bad idea. You were getting picked off. So if you were scared and you wanted to get out of the compound, there was no way you were getting out. It didn't matter if you were a man, a woman, or a child. They were picking you off. So you had to stay in there. This is your only chance, your only hope. It's like, wait these guys out and hope that the cavalry comes. Well, there was no cavalry, was there? You know what was really interesting about that time, too? That was a time when theoretically the militia movement was starting to heat up in the United States. By the way, I'm going to talk about what's going on in the border in New Mexico and these guys who were down there, rounding up uh, the illegals. I guess they're not really that illegal anymore. They're only legal in our minds. They're incredibly legal now once they put one toenail over on the other side of that border. And in fact, they will actually do border runs and pick people up if they're close and just bring them over. That's what's happening now. So this whole notion that they're illegal is ridiculous. They're only illegal in name, not necessarily in the name of the law. Your wonderful president, Donald J. Trump, took care of that. You notice how this whole thing with the state of emergency and all that stuff, it just went nowhere. It's just like a pallid fart. It just went nowhere. And I'm not even advocating that it needed to go somewhere, but it went nowhere. Nobody's talking about it. It's all just move on, on to the next thing. And now we're into the post-Mueller lynch mob mentality. You think anybody's going to go down? You think Peter Strzok or Lisa Page or any of these people? Do you think they're gonna go down? Hell no. Do you think James Comey's going to go down? No. None of these people will do any time. None of them. Clapper won't do any time. None of them. They will be allowed to continue to wreak havoc and do what they do because they're protected. Why are they protected? Because they have files on everybody. That's why. They've got files on congressmen. They've got files on senators. They've got files on people inside the Trump administration. And if anything ever happens to them, that shit will get out. And the next thing you know, somebody will be up for re-election or they'll have to step down. I'm telling you, it's booby-trapped. It's rigged. Okay? So there may be like a mob mentality. Let's go get them. And Barr might be going through the motions. I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Disabuse yourself of that. The sooner you figure it out, the better. And then you can move on with your life and get on to the things that are really important. Okay? But let's go back to the border, go back to Waco. That was the time when the militias were starting to get their feet under the ground. There was this one guy, Mark from Michigan. Then there was Bo Gritz. Bo Gritz was the original Rambo. He was the guy that went in and was hired by families to go in and extract POWs from Vietnam. He did it. They got the money together. You got a little squad of ex-Delta Force dudes. And they went there and they freed up some people. Even our own country couldn't do that. Couldn't do it. Give two shits about what happened during the war. What happened to the POWs and the MIAs. It was done. Their families were just left in the lurch. Well, Bo Gritz was kind of a mini hero. Again, Rambo was based on him. So he went in and he extracted some people. He was supposed to be a guy that was going to be kind of this figurehead or this leader of this movement where people were waking up. And during the mid-90s, 96, 97, people were waking up. 94, 90, it was happening. When Clinton came into office, so there were two major events during the 90s that triggered everything. One was George Bush and his New World Order speech, because I was in Olympia, Washington, and I've said this before, when Bill Cooper made an appearance there. It was in 1990. And Bill Cooper was there, and we were at the gymnasium where they played basketball and stuff at Evergreen College, and that place was packed. It was packed. There wasn't an empty seat in the gym. Okay, so you tell me if this awakening thing is new. No, it's not new. It's been going on. So the New World Order speech, and then the election of William Jefferson Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and what happened with Vince Foster. And there were videotapes that were making the rounds back then. And there was a video about Waco, which was really mind-blowing. Totally mind-blowing. All pre-internet stuff. It showed exactly what happened with Waco, how the whole thing was staged, and how the ATF went in. They went into the compound. And what was really interesting is that the first guy that goes in, so of course, David Koresh had a relationship with the local, the sheriff's department and the police department. You know why? Because David Koresh was selling them guns. And guess what? It's legal in the state of Texas. He had a license to sell guns. Now, whether or not you think it's crazy or insane or whatever your value judgment around that is, at the time it was legal, and he was doing business with the locals. So the ATF got involved, and they started to have these, it was complaints about what was going on inside of the compound. And David Koresh was a messianic sociopath. He's a messianic sociopath. I mean, that part is clear, right? He had a bunch of wives. He had a bunch of young wives inside of the compound. And the men were basically supposed to take vows of celibacy with their wives. And of course, David Koresh could service them. And that's what he did. So I'm not giving David Koresh a pass, and my research has also uncovered the fact that David Koresh could have been an asset as well. There's very interesting stuff around David Koresh, certainly on the mind control front, because at one point, he's Vernon. That was his first name, Vernon. He's Vernon. He's he's bumbling, he's stumbling, he can't recite a look of the Bible. And then the next thing you know, he's leading these incredible, sermons. And he knows the Bible inside and out. You tell me what happened. He goes from being Vernon to David Koresh. Anyway, so what happens now is the ATF and the government, specifically the Clinton administration, they want to make an example of what happened in Waco. They want to make an example of the Branch Davidians. So they go in there, they line up the ATF on the outside, Alcohol Tobacco Farms, of the Branch Davidian compound, and they basically are going to make an assault into the compound. And if you watch the video very, very carefully, you will see that the leader of the assault team goes in through the upper window. Now, they've got video on this, which is very interesting to me. Right? So somebody is taking video of it. So who is taking video of it? Is it the ATF? Do they want to establish something? Is it a news group? So the leader goes in first. And then there are 4 guys, I think there were 5 guys that go in after this guy who's leading the assault. Those 5 guys are all former Arkansas state troopers. They all had connections with Bill Clinton. They all drove him around. And they all had jobs now working with the ATF. Bill says, yeah, come on, I guess I got a job for you. Come on, fellas. I'll get you a good job with the ATF. It'll be good. It'll be real good. Get a good salary. Don't have to do much. So they go in. They go in after this guy who's leading that. And he is not part of the Arkansas Mafia protecting Bill Clinton. So what does he do? He's firing backwards. He's like picking these guys off from the inside. It was not one of the members of the Branch Davidians. So these Arkansas state troopers, I think one of them survived, the others died. Now that becomes the flashpoint, and they can lay waste ultimately to Waco. This is what happens. Now, what's interesting is ultimately, right, all the evidence that is stored for what happened during the trial or the after trial, whatever that travesty was, that was stored where? In the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. What happened there? Well, that went down. So all the evidence that's connected, all the evidence that was connected to Waco, gone. And if you look at the list of people who died during the Oklahoma City bombing, one of them was a former Arkansas state trooper. He was working there. The Clinton administration got him a job there. But during that time, that's when the militias were really big. So, wouldn't have been a great time for the militias to go down to the Branch Davidian compound and go protect them. The militias weren't there, but I'll tell you who was there. It was Alex Jones. That's the event that sets Alex Jones onto his arc. And Bill Hicks is also there. It's the last public sighting of Bill Hicks. He's got the beard on, and he's talking about what's going on. And then Alex Jones comes onto the scene, and that's where he finally or firmly plants his foot into conspiracy land. So it's a very interesting event. It's a very pivotal event, but they don't talk about it. We'll talk about Columbine. We'll talk about the OKC bombing, but they won't really get into Waco because there is blood. The blood of innocence is on their hands. But we listened to people, I listened to people over the weekend talking about, oh yeah, Columbine. Well, you know, I was just a kid then, but I remember it. Boy, do I remember it. Man, terrible this, terrible that. Our family, new family. I mean, so these events become like many versions, many incarnations of the Holocaust, and every single year we'll go through this thing, come up again and come up again, and jack into the psyche, and traumatize people. In the meantime, we got new events that are happening. So we have, of course, the fire with the church and the bombing and a bunch of other stuff in between. We had the Mueller report, which I didn't even really talk about because I took the week off. And the Mueller report was a joke. The whole Mueller thing was a frickin' joke. It was a psychological operation. And the psychological operation was never, ever, ever to use that information to impeach Trump. That was happening so they could bend Trump into a little pretzel and get him to do what they wanted to do. Okay? That's what happened with this basically 2-year operation. And Trump is very compliant now. He did the right thing when it came to immigration. Oh yeah, he stomped his feet. I'm going to shut the government down. Right? He did all that shit. At the end of the day, what happened? More division, more divide and conquer, and everybody who wanted whatever they got or whatever they wanted with the border, they got it. And Trump, and then he says, okay, we're going to declare a state of emergency. Like it was a big fucking deal. They're declared all the time. All the time. Ridiculous. Ridiculousness. That's what I say. Anyway. Toothless. He's toothless. Sorry, he's toothless. And I don't think there's any 5D chess going on. So they got him to bend to their will. They did this before. They did it with Clinton. When Clinton was getting raked through the coals with the Rose law firm, same deal. What did he do? Well, he decided to play ball with NATO and go in and bomb the shit out of Kosovo and all those places. Oh yeah, I'll go back in and I'll start bombing Iraq again, the no-fly zone. He did whatever they wanted him to do at that point. They bent him over and they twisted him up. Nixon wouldn't. Nixon wouldn't comply. Nixon was rogue. And they couldn't get Nixon to turn. And so what did they do? They just completely ran him right out of the government. If they don't like what you're doing, you get run. That's just the bottom line. And if you comply and you play nice, then you won't get run. And that's where Trump is right now. Now they're going to talk about obstruction, and it's going to be another psychological operation, divide the country even more, create more enmity, more fractional differences. I mean, it's bullshit. It's total bullshit. People are getting played. And you know it, and I know it. They're getting played on the left, they're getting played on the right, getting played. There were a lot of people that were banging their drum. Oh, well, he's innocent. He's innocent. See. Yeah, to that extent. But that's not. Mueller was always there. Mueller is an inside man. He's a company guy. He will take people down if they need to or want to. What did he do at Lance Armstrong? He took his ass down. He took Lance Armstrong down. He was the guy that was in charge of the investigation with Lance Armstrong. Why? Why was Lance Armstrong such a big fucking deal? Yeah, was he a kind of a no good jerk? Of course he was. Lance Armstrong was not a very nice person, but he made the bicycling industry a shitload of money. He was also a longtime friend of the Bushes and protected by the Bushes when he was in office. The Lance Armstrong deal was a demoralization operation. He was an American hero. He'd gone to France and he had won the Tour de France. And along the way, because he was a dick and there were people that were part of Lance Armstrong's bicycling team, there was a Zephyr with the post office bicycle who didn't like him. And they didn't like him because he was always given the yellow jersey. He was always the fastest guy. He was the guy that was using steroids, and they were all using steroids. The Tour de France has a history of drug use. Back in the 40s and the 50s, it was methamphetamine. The steroids hadn't gotten that sophisticated yet. The French racers were taking methamphetamine like crazy. And they get 3, 4, 5 years of hardcore racing out of their bodies, and then they would just collapse. Right? This is what they did. They would train on it and whole 9 yards. Because if you trained on methamphetamine, you could train harder. Anyway. So Lance Armstrong was a takedown. Obama had just gotten into office and was like, let's go get him. We need a scalp. We need a scalp. And we need not just a scalp, we need a white scalp. We need to take down, a quote-unquote white hero. This is what they did. And Lance Armstrong was the low-hanging fruit, man. He was there for the picking because he pissed so many people off. But at the end of the day, what did that really do? What did that really do? What did that really accomplish? You know? Are you now more circumspect about using steroids for your job and the performance of your job? Do you look at Lance Armstrong as a morality tale and say, oh, maybe I should be less of a dick? What did it really do? It didn't do anything. It was an act of humiliation for Lance Armstrong. And maybe in the great scheme of things, there was a huge karmic takedown, blah, 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 blah. Okay, maybe that's it. All for us to see. Well, there are a lot of other people in the world. I'm not here to defend Lance Armstrong. I'm not. The guy, any accounts you read of him from people that know him, he's just not a nice guy. And the whole thing with the Lance Armstrong Foundation, Livestrong, that was set up by his buddy. Lance was not really all that into it. It was his buddy that was into it. And they had a big fat deal with Nike. Huge. And once Nike got wind of what happened and this whole thing, and they knew, these people know, they're not stupid. But once it got to a point where Lance Armstrong became toxic, they pulled out of Livestrong. Remember, Livestrong was a freaking cultural force, man. Everything was yellow. You had the yellow wristbands. Oh, we don't want to have that. We don't have a culture. We don't want a real cultural force, a real foundation that is fronted by some white guy, even though the white guy's a total phony. We don't want that because it really would upset the architecture of the social change that's taking place. So Mueller went in and he went after him. He got Lance Armstrong. They hire Mueller to do things. He's a hatchet man. He's a sniper. He was hired as the head of the FBI just before 9/11 happened. Why? So he could control the flow of information. This is the role that he plays. This is the role that he played for the last 2 years. The other thing with Lance Armstrong is that the name is interesting, right? Armstrong, and you have Neil Armstrong and Jack Armstrong, the all-American boy. So there was this kind of archetypal takedown that was taking place. And it happened. It happened right at the beginning of the year. And I was aware of this. I wrote about it. It's like, look what happened. Look what's happening here. Dude's being taken down. And it set the stage for a lot of what would happen pursuant to that in the Obama administration. Anyway, so here we are. We're in it now. We're seeing what's going on. And we're seeing, and again, it is not the Muslims versus the Christians. Although they would like to think that's what's happening. They would like you to think that's what's happening. The whole idea here is to get to a point where everything becomes decimated or close to decimation. And when that happens, they will bring all three of the Abrahamic faiths together into one syncretic religion, and that will be the New World religion, that they will no longer be fighting against one another. Right? This is what's going to happen. And Notre-Dame, I believe, will be kind of the first temple that will reflect this new religion, whatever they're going to call it. And that's going to happen also in Jerusalem. I believe the third temple will reflect this new version of Christianity and Islam and Judaism all together. And some people say, oh, great, wonderful, wonderful. Isn't that great? We can all get along now. Well, it's a bunch of bullshit. Because what they're doing is they're creating a situation where people will fret and people will stress out and people will just beg, absolutely beg for order to be installed or restored, right? Installed and restored. That they'll beg for it. They'll absolutely beg for it. And then they'll say, oh, great. Oh, finally, we can have one religion, and this is where it's all going to. But that's just a front. It's going to be false. It'll be a false religion. It's just going to be created so people can have this finally a sense like, oh, yeah, oh, we can all get along now. Well, that may be a ways off, but they're in the process. They're in the process of doing it. This is what's happening. And I told you at the beginning of the week it was going to get weird, and it sure as hell got really weird. It started off with the fire at Notre-Dame, and now on Sunday, the bombings in Sri Lanka. And we still have, 8 more days, 9 more days, till we get to the 1st of May, May Day, which is the celebration of the communist state. Using May Day, which is a fertility rite or a day that celebrates nature, and it actually celebrates the rising of the sap in the trees and the sprouting of flowers and plants. It also it's symbolic of the rising of the phallus, right? Because if you look at the May Day celebrations, you have the maypole dance, the Morris dance, they're dancing around the phallus, right? This is what it's about. And back when the Soviets were running their little program, they'd have their May Day celebrations, and they'd run their big tanks down the middle of Red Square, right? Which was their, gigantic phalluses that they could launch and fire anywhere in the world, and destroy life. So that's the culmination. It's going to be May Day. Anyway, we're in it now. We're in it. So So what are you going to do? It always comes down to this is always what I bring everything back to. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to have to be aware of the fact that we're in it now. You have to be aware of the fact that that allegiances or alliances that you thought were sacrosanct, that they may not be as sacrosanct as you thought they were. And I'm going to go right into the Trump administration. Remember, I said he's a bringer of chaos. It's what he does. And the best thing he ever did was to pop the balloon on political correctness. And there's been a backlash against it, but it's okay. It's okay. We have to get there. We have to deal with that head on, and that and free speech. And I champion anybody's free speech. To be honest with you, if we cannot speak freely, and I don't care if you're, the black Israelite Hebrew guys in New York City, you want to talk shit there and do that, you can do it. You can do it. In another part of the world, if you were doing it, say in someplace in Texas, well, first of all, you may not talk the shit. Second of all, there'd be a price to pay. You would have to deal with it, right? You'd have to deal with people that didn't like you, and they may do something as a result of that. But they have the right to do that. Just like people on the far right have a right to talk, say whatever they want to say. They have the right to do that. That's the nature of this thing. And you can either reject their ideas, or you can sit there and listen and say, well, maybe that makes a little bit of sense. This is the front line right now. And it's a big deal. Really big deal. I've been watching a little bit of Owen Benjamin, who I really like. I like Owen Benjamin. And he just got kicked out of PayPal, which is the new thing now. That if you say things or you espouse things that are inflammatory, that your funding will be cut off. And it's not just PayPal. Patreon has done it. But by the way, where is Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin's a new version of Patreon? That's where it is. Just jerking you off. Still, Jordan Peterson makes way too much money on Patreon in order to like create his own thing. Sorry, but that's what happens now. They just cut you off at the knees, whether it's PayPal or whether it's like apparently what is it, Chase? Chase is just shutting people's bank accounts down. This is going to be the new model, man. It's going to be a new model. And then eventually what will happen is they'll just move everything over into the digital realm. So if you don't play nice in the digital realm, just hit a button. Right? Delete, delete, delete. That's what's going on. So you got to be aware. You have to be aware this is the world that we're living in. And you would think that based on what I'm saying, that it's logical, rational, reasonable. I'm not here to espouse any kind of hate, but I'm here to, kind of remind you what's going on, right? You would think that there would be people that could have a similar point of view in my position, but with a much larger audience, that would be able to get this point across. And other people go, oh, yeah, right, okay, yeah, that makes sense, sure. But no, that doesn't happen now because people are immediately shouted down as being a nationalist or being an anti-Semite or whatever it is. That is it. And there's been this encouragement of like going after people who decide that they want to challenge the status quo around things as basic as pronouns or the mind block of political correctness. So you won't find many champions of it. You won't. If you find them, they're kind of on the backwaters of YouTube and probably not really all that prominent. Because when you get to a certain point, you've got to, you got to play the game. All right, let me get into the chats. Let me see what you guys are doing in Chatlandia. Let's see. I never thought any of the Trumps were in danger with Mueller in charge. He worked for them pre-White House. Let's see. Robert, was Notre Dame's cathedral a false flag? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? A false flag? It happened, right? It happened. I think it comes down to, was it staged? Was it an accident? Was it initiated? I don't think it was an accident. I don't think it was an accident at all. I think they torched that thing, and they did something with it. And I would venture to guess that there was something that was rigged inside of there. Either it was rigged, or I don't know. There'd be some kind of a particle beam flash or something. But they were able to incinerate, or houses were incinerate to the ground, burned to the ground in California, like that. Right? Would it be impossible to do the same with a landmark church? Question mark. Anyway, I'm going to get on out of here. Thank you for being patient. I just needed to take the week off and put my head together. And I had the last degrees of Mercury in Pisces opposing my sun, and I was kind of surly on Wednesday and Thursday, and I probably would have said things I probably would have regretted. We're back now. Thanks for joining me. You've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame, and I am Robert Phoenix. Thank you for being in the chat room, everybody.